Hello and welcome back. Today I want to talk about something I've seen in the market for artificial intelligence, and I think it's something we need to address as a whole. And that is the marketeering and profiteering going on within the current market structure versus what is really the truth about artificial intelligence. To start off, I think it's best that we have a context or a demonstration, historically speaking. So for that, I'm going to use the Jetsons, the idea of the flying car, the big hype in the late 60s, 70s, and onward that we would all have flying cars by the year 2000, and our cities would be floating in the sky. It was a big push of what the future was meant to look like. It was a big, giant sales marketing campaign to drive hundreds of millions of dollars into innovation. Well, the year 2000 still came, and still no flying cars. We've had a few prototypes, but nothing ever really materialized. 25 years later, today, we still don't have that perfect Jetsons utopia. That's not to say that someday we won't have flying cars or that we won't have a Jetsons-style lifestyle. But for now, for today, for the reality of the world, the marketing hype didn't live up to the truth. That is true of artificial intelligence. All of the buzzwords, rhetoric, and whatever has gone on in the last 2 years is the same thing all over again. That's not to say someday we're not going to have more intelligent AI systems. But right now, the hype and the profiteering and the marketeering aren't reality. The reality is actually much more simple and more useful, to be honest. And it requires going back to the earlier days of what artificial intelligence was and how it became what it is today. Now, I'm not going to go through code or technical discussions because that's not really the point. There's enough of that content on the internet. What I want to talk about is the basis of the ideology, the framework, the understanding, the purpose behind what it can be really used for meaningfully in daily life. Artificial intelligence as we see today is one big fat lie. It's a meaningless word of nothing more than some greedy company trying to rob you blind. The reality of what artificial intelligence is basically a database, a bookshelf, or a library, really, connected to the world through every library in the world. And the index is basically the card catalog of every single one of those libraries. This giant repository of knowledge is connected to a keyboard, a natural language processor that takes what we type into it, or for our cell phones, what we say into it through speech-to-text software, and then it's able to go search this vast repository of knowledge. Realistically, that is what AI is. And if you want to give it a proper word or a proper naming, it would be considered a living encyclopedia. Back in the earlier portions of my own research, knowledge bases were a critical framework, basically databases with a specialized front end. Database, of course, being akin to the bookshelf with a card catalog as the index. When you start combining these databases and start searching between them, things become very complicated. Large language models and natural language processing really became the cornerstone of handling massive amounts of data. For example, being able to check financial reports, for a country like China or the United States or Russia or even India can be a monumental nightmare for research. The level of data that exists on these countries' economies is staggering. And that is really where this combination of a language model and natural language processing really shine. The modern day context, or this living encyclopedia, becomes a framework of research that is, quite frankly, impressive. You can literally do a year's worth of research in 5 or 10 minutes because of this incredible tool. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, and it's not going to write a PhD dissertation, but it gives you things to check, things to look up, things to compare, things to validate. It gives you a starting point versus one of the worst things in the world when you're dealing with research: the blank page. By being able to ask a question and get a starting point from this incredible repository of knowledge, AI is literally the quintessential global knowledge base. By being able to search for information not even in your own native language and have it translate that information for you is invaluable. That doesn't mean that it's perfect, because it isn't perfect. If you ask it stupid questions, it's going to return stupid answers. It's not going to solve the world's problems. It's not going to cure anything without the individual behind the keyboard or behind the microphone putting work into the content. AI isn't going to magically make somebody a genius. An idiot with a tool is still an idiot with a tool, no matter how intelligent that tool is. If you give that tool to a researcher wanting to try to correlate cancer cases globally, it can be a valid and viable starting point. But somebody like me, who has no idea about that kind of research, it's a waste of resources. But for me, giving me that kind of a tool and having me ask about theological representations between different religions, or something that I have a PhD in, that then does have a reference and a meaningful relationship. Or for me to be able to take a piece of Python code and translate it into another programming language for demonstration is a valid usage for my abilities and knowledge. AI isn't just a blank slate of super genius capability or quality. Just because you sit down behind an LLM and ask it a question doesn't mean you're instantly a genius. It just means you have access to a very powerful tool that you need to learn to use. Carpenters don't build houses on their first day of learning how to use a hammer. The same is true with modern day artificial intelligence, modern day language models. You're not going to get good results on your first try. You need to learn about the model and its training. But that's the other issue with artificial intelligence. And it's a big issue in relation to the truth about fact-checking, or even what we consider facts. Artificial intelligence doesn't know what a fact is, except for what it has been explicitly told is a fact. If somebody trains an artificial intelligence model and tells it in that training that the sky is purple, then anybody who says the sky is blue is going to be told they're wrong, because the data the model was trained on explicitly says the sky is purple. This is the fallacy of artificial intelligence. It doesn't know truth versus lie. It can't reason and simply look at the sky. It's not capable of leaving its little black box in the computer. It doesn't have an outside world. It doesn't have a reference for an age, a birth, or meaningful points in its existence. It can be given a whole fake history to where it can pretend to be human, but it's still not human. There's things that can be asked that will always undermine an AI or learning model system. About childhood, about references of what it was like growing up in a particular era. All of these things are real world circumstances that can't be addressed to an AI or by an AI. And they're never going to be able to be addressed to it because it's a machine. It can never have a life. It can fake empathy better than most humans actually show empathy, but it's still not living. Artificial intelligence as a tool is indispensable. As a research mechanism, it cures the problem of the blank page. It helps you ask the question, and then from there, it can give you more questions or information to start actual research with by verifying facts or by looking at the situation differently. That is its greatest strength as a living encyclopedia, to be able to pick a blank page and actually give you something to start with. There is nothing worse than being a researcher and having a problem you need to research and having no idea where to actually start. And as idiotic as that sounds, quite often problems can be given in such a way that there's no real clear path to start. The idioms of simply breaking it down to what you know doesn't always work. And sometimes having an encyclopedia that you can ask a question like what is and then whatever the term is can help break it down even more. Sometimes the problem isn't really knowing the question, but also knowing how to simplify the question to something that you can digest. Language is complicated, and with so many different languages on the planet, it becomes a very difficult process to research and learn and grow. Whether you're trying to research something for a chemistry class or a history class or even self-growth, that issue of research is the undisputed king of what modern-day AI and language learning models are. They are incredible resources if a language is not your first choice. For example, somebody that might not speak English natively is able to use language learning models to do research about a topic and then have that topic converted into their own language. The same is true for somebody that doesn't speak English natively. In the case of some of what I've been doing for my trading channel, looking at and investigating Chinese economy. I don't speak Chinese by any means. China's economy is very, very heavily documented, and none of it I can read. But having that learning model available to me to be able to translate China's economic information into something I can understand gave me a research tool that really elevated my own ability to understand the dynamics of the Chinese economy. And that has a direct correlative implication in real world trading. In the world of trading, money is on the line. And if you don't have knowledge because of language barriers, you're more likely to lose your money. The AI or LLM learning models of today really are what sci-fi of the 60s called universal translators. And they work exceptionally well in that case. In my own research project of Newshound, it translates 34 different languages into something I can read and understand. It's opened the door in terms of what's going on around the world with different levels of perspective and insight that I never knew existed. It's given me a way of looking at humanity through a different lens. And when you strip away a lot of the dogma, rhetoric, politics, and simply national identity in terms of the geopolitical toxicity, and you just look at the people in their own natural language and news elements, talking about day-to-day life, day-to-day situations, the cost of food, the cost of housing, the cost of medicine, or how frequently available medical resources are. You begin to see that we're not that different. We're not that different at all. In fact, when you strip away all of the things that divide us deliberately and just look at who we are as a species, it really becomes quite interesting just how little differences we really have. This is probably one of the greatest gifts that AI in a modern context or language learning models has given us to date, is the ability to strip away all of the social toxicity and manipulation that governments use to try to vilify or promote an ideology, to being able to look at an individual in their own environment and see that they're not that different from who we are really. From the standpoint of what modern day learning models are capable of doing, they are phenomenal. But it's not brand new technology. It is technology that's taking 30 plus years to build and research. It's technology that started out with a idea of being able to talk to the machine or write something out to the machine and simply having it go do the research for you. Go find the answer. That really is the real problem that AI is a genuine solution for. Not for solving world hunger, although somebody with the right questions and the right knowledge might be able to do that. The AI itself will not. Just as the AI itself can't build a house by itself. At least not yet. In the future, perhaps with the use of robots, it might be able to do that, but somebody had to give it the blueprint. Somebody had to start the motion forward. That is where we as humans have the upper hand. But that upper hand has a price, and that we have to put aside the stupidity and the rhetoric of the marketeering and profiteering and useless idiocy that has flooded our society. Technology is wonderful when used properly, but when it's used improperly, when it's rushed to market to satisfy greed, as in the case of many self-driving cars, the real-world consequences are devastating. And for all those screaming that it's just nothing more than statistics, like 1% or 0.5%, that's all fine and well, until you are the statistic. And that is the problem. AI has a place, but not everything needs to be made with AI. I don't need a toaster that wants to question and have an existential crisis on how light or dark I want my toast. I don't need a refrigerator to tell me I'm out of milk when I can just open the door and see that I'm out of milk. I don't need a dishwasher to tell me that my dishes are still dirty when I can simply look at them and see that myself. A lot of what has been done in the marketeering and profiteering part of AI has nothing to do with AI, and it's simply promising empty lies. And those lies are overall going to hurt the entire market in general. It's also going to put this technology in places that's going to cost real lives, needlessly. AI is not ready to drive on the road. I've demonstrated in my own channels, on my own Patreon, several cases where AI can't get a simple classification right for a news article. And yet that very same model is in a self-driving car making life and death decisions at freeway and interstate speeds. There is a problem. There is a disconnect. And it starts with knowing exactly what the technology really is and how to really use it. Please let me know what you think. Leave me a comment below. If you like this kind of video, or this kind of talking, let me know. Share your thoughts. Please give this video a like. Please help me spread the word about what this technology really can do and how it really can be a benefit to society in the right ways. Thank you for watching.